It is the 26th of June, 1612. Matthias von Habsburg has just attained the highest honor in Europe. He has been named the Holy Roman Emperor. However, his empire is fragmented. Not only is it a conglomeration of small German states, it is also broken up into religious factions. Protestant and Catholic relations have broken down since the Peace of Augsburg outlined the idea of religious tolerance. Religious spats were breaking out all over Europe. The tension mounted between the Protestants and the Catholics. However, Matthias attempted to mend the tears between the feuding religions. Sadly, all of this was undone by his successor, Emperor Ferdinand II. The new Holy Roman Emperor was a very devout Catholic who refused to uphold the letter of majesty. This article was created by one of the previous emperors, Rudolf II, to allow freedom of religious choice to all of the nobles and inhabitants of the cities in the empire. His removal of this law caused what is known as the Bohemian Revolt. The 30 Years' War had begun. With the battles raging now, the war was split into two sides. From 1618 to 1620, Bohemia, the country that started it all, was fiercely led by Frederick V against the Holy Roman Empire and Ferdinand II. This country had made allies over those years, and with the help of the Scottish, English, Lower Austria, and even the Ottoman Empire, the invasion of Poland was planned and executed, causing the Polish-Ottoman War. The Ottomans defeated the Poles in 1620, causing Ferdinand to lose Poland. However, the Ottomans were not able to intervene in the Battle of the White Mountain 1 month after the Ottoman victory. On the other side, the Spanish had convinced the Saxons to join Ferdinand and fight against the Bohemian rebels in exchange for control of Lusatia. The Catholic League, a collection of nations on the side of Ferdinand, decided that the best way to destroy the revolts in Bohemia would be to attack from Upper and Lower Austria, pacifying those countries until the armies met up at the north and attacked Bohemia from the south. The defeat of Bohemia was on November 8th, 1620, at the White Mountain, the day that Ferdinand II defeated Frederick V. This defeat caused a massive change in the nation, and with its new leaders, Bohemia joined the side of the empire. The Danish intervention from 1625 to 1629 was the next period of the war. The Danish were ruled by King Christian IV, who originally got into the war through helping Lower Saxony lead an army against the empire. Denmark had been a Protestant empire for some time now, and they felt that the rule of Ferdinand II would be nothing but detrimental to their society. Denmark had officially entered the war. Ferdinand, to combat Christian's army, had enlisted the help of Albrecht von Wallenstein, a Bohemian nobleman who agreed to join the army only if he could plunder the captured territories. Christian was swiftly defeated. Therefore, he and Christian came to discuss terms. A treaty was formed, and Christian regained control of Denmark as long as they abandoned their support for the Protestant German states. Denmark was now Catholic. The Swedish intervention during 1630 to 1635 marked the next major step in the war. Under the rule of King Gustavus Adolphus, the Swedes were able to successfully drive back the Catholic forces, which regained much of the Protestant lost territory. With distrust of Albrecht growing in the Catholic League, Ferdinand removed him from power, and the emperor now relied on the Catholic League. However, Gustavus swiftly put an end to that, defeating the Catholic League and eventually killing the commander, the Count of Tilly. The upper hand of the war seemed to switch sides to that of the Protestants. With the death of the Count, Ferdinand went back to Albrecht to regain the power to the side of the empire. Albrecht and his army went up to the south and threatened the supplies of Gustavus. Gustavus, knowing that he would eventually have to fight Albrecht, decided that there was no other option, and the two armies clashed at the Battle of Lutzen in 1632. This battle was eventually won by the Swedish. However, Gustavus Adolphus died in the battle. Ferdinand once again began to doubt Albrecht and believed that he might switch sides. Ferdinand decided that the best move would be to remove Albrecht from power and incarcerate him. However, as Albrecht attempted to contact the Swedes, one of his own killed him in the town hall. In the same year, the Protestants, without Gustav's leadership, lost a war to the Spanish. The Empire and the Protestant German sides met for negotiation and were able to draw up an agreement, the Peace of Prague. This treaty allowed the nations that were Protestant before 1627 to be free of prosecution. It also combined all of the armies into the Holy Roman Empire army and forgave any nation that joined the Swedes. France and Sweden never signed the treaty, and so the fight continues into its last chapter. From 1635 to 1648, the French intervention and the ever-continuing support of the Swedish was the final section of this war that seemed to have no end. The French, even though they were Roman Catholic, hated the Habsburg powers and wanted to see them destroyed. Cardinal Richelieu, the minister for the French king Louis XIII, had already helped out the Swedes during the last stage by supplying money to their army to defeat the emperor in Germany. When the Peace of Prague was signed and the Swedish lost their allies, France entered the war. However, something no one had thought about occurred 2 years later. Emperor Ferdinand II died, and his son, Ferdinand III, took his rightful place of Holy Roman Emperor. Ferdinand wanted something his father never did: peace. However, the war would rage on for another 11 years. Between the Spanish and the French, the battles were a game of tug-of-war. Spain would invade France and capture many locations, but then France would push the Spaniards back to the border. These encounters went on like this until 1640, when the tides eventually turned and France began to win. Starting off with the siege of Fort Arras, the French captured all of the Flanders and helped out with the Catalaunian revolt, which led to domestic feuds in Spain. Later on, the Portuguese rose up against Spain, and once again France supplied help. Spain eventually had no choice. They turned their attention from the War of Europe to the war of their own nation. While France was destroying Spain's control, the Swedes took part in the Second Battle of Breton Field in 1642. This encounter led to the deaths of 20,000 of the emperor's men, while the Swedish captured 5,000 of Ferdinand's troops and only lost 4,000 of their own. This allowed Sweden to capture Saxony and make it clear to Ferdinand that they needed to be included in the peace treaties. In 1643, Denmark once again wanted to join the war, but this time they wanted to go against the Swedish. The Swedes would have none of that, so they evicted the Prince of Denmark and took control of their nation, limiting the ways for them to join the war. In 1647, peace talk began to break out. France, Sweden, Bulgaria, and Cologne signed the Truce of Ulm, removing Bulgaria and Cologne from the emperor's side. The Battle of Prague in 1648 is sometimes considered the last large battle of the war. The Swedes went back to where it all started, the Prague Castle, where the Second Defenestration of Prague took place. They claimed the castle and held it until the call for peace was eventually spread. The war ended with the signing of the Treaty of Westphalia on January 20th, 1648. Everyone who signed agreed to never participate in another religious war. This treaty was an early exploration of religious tolerance. This was the beginning of the end of Habsburg dominance in Germany. No longer would Austria hold moral authority over the Protestant princes. France, on the other hand, being relatively tolerant, gained influence in their religion. This exchange allowed smaller princes, such as Prussia, to grow and eventually form Germany. The 30 Years' War has many lasting impacts, and it led to a widespread religious acceptance within Christianity that is still relevant today. The extremely violent encounters of the war between the great powers of Europe led to the exploration of religious tolerance in order to prevent further conflict between Protestants and Catholics. This caused Austria, a Catholic country, to lose power over the multi-theist Holy Roman Empire, while France, a religiously tolerant country, gained that power in a great exchange which shaped the face of Europe as we know it.